So welcome everyone. I feel like it's been a week since we've done a webinar. It has been a week since we've done a webinar because the one on Tuesday had to get rescheduled, so we didn't have one on Tuesday. So for me, it has been a week. So look, want to welcome everyone. This is one of those topics that I'm glad we have on the schedule because I'm kind of keen to learn a bit more about it. 3D modeling for event sites isn't something we do a whole lot. I can't remember a time when we would have directly had it done for a client. I guess they're not really the types of events we do, but it's always something I've been interested in. And talking to a few of you guys, it's something a few people are keen to understand more about, because I think it's something we expect that really, really high-end conferences and stuff do to wow clients and wow sponsors and stuff like that. And I'd imagine James is nodding there. I'm sure that's some of the reason it's done, and I'm sure there may well be other reasons. So just before James takes over and goes on with the presentation, I'll do a few of the normal bits that we need to do. So use the chat function for questions. James is quite easygoing, like a lot of our presenters have been. So if there's questions that are coming up, and it makes sense for me to kind of jump back in the middle of the presentation and chat about stuff or go off on a tangent with you guys if there's something you want to know. He's comfortable that we might try and do that. So just ask the questions as they come to you. Otherwise, we'll do obviously the more structured Q&A at the end that we tend to do. And again, for that part, we'll do that raise your hand to speak thing that we've been doing that's been working quite well. So that allows, for those of you who don't know, that allows you to turn your mic on, turn your camera on if you want to, and we can give you permission to come on kind of and ask your question and get into a conversation maybe about the stuff James has been talking about. So that's been working quite well. We didn't use it for the first few, but we've been using it lately and it kind of works well. So do keep that in mind. We'll do that at the end. As usual, I do need to do the one kind of thank you I always do, which is to Actavo, to Paul Griffin and the guys in Actavo Events who are supporting us with the webinars. I did that thing the other day where you think you can have a 10-minute conversation with someone. Paul Griffin and I know we can't have 10-minute conversations. We should know better. So I think it was nearly an hour and a half as I sat in my car outside my house, and we talked about all sorts of things, talked about the industry, COVID, what else we might be able to do to kind of help people during this time. I think the webinars are one thing. It gives people a chance to talk about events and learn more on that, and they're good. But we've been looking at maybe a couple of other things that we might try and do. So again, as usual, Paul and Actavo very keen to get involved and help. So stay tuned, as they say. We might have a few more tricks up our sleeves to try and help everyone muddle through this. I think that's pretty much all I need to say. Like I said, keep the questions coming in. We'll monitor them in the chat. We'll answer any that we can. If there's simple questions we can answer. Otherwise, we'll put them to James either at the end or we'll jump in if it makes sense to do so. Oh, Alan's here. Alan's here from Australia, as usual. Thank you, Alan. Good to see you. I owe you an email, by the way. I might do it while James is talking, while it's fresh in my head. So, James, I think we're good to go. If you want to take over, pop your presentation up. Yeah. Like I said, if my head suddenly appears, we have a tangent or we have a question or whatever. So we can go through that, and I'll talk to you in a while.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mark. So first thing I'll say, so a lot, that's just me. And I should probably say I'm a lot more used to being on the other side of the camera than I am on this side of the camera. So please just bear with me a little bit on a few bits. Before we dive into 3D modeling, I should tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm talking about this today. So I have a degree in performance design and production from Leeds University, where I specialized in technical management. And as part of that course, it was very heavily involved in the design for theatre. That's what the course was based in. And due to being a student and not having access to a great deal of resource or time or facilities, we did a lot of the work we did virtually, I suppose. And this is going back, I'm always older than I think I am. Going back 13 years when I was at university. And we modeled a lot of our design schemes in the 3D world, just because we couldn't physically have access to the big theatres. And that's where I got into 3D design modeling, and I've moved on. Obviously things have moved on a bit since then, but that's the basis of where I started 3D modeling. After uni, I went to be a lighting technician. very quickly moved on to more programming and design work. I found it was a lot easier to push buttons and mouses than it was flight cases across muddy fields. So migrated to the front of house tower quite rapidly, and then took a kind of departure into more of an operational management kind of role, running the facilities that make an events company happen. I wouldn't say that was a conscious decision to stop doing jobs and spend more time running the company, in essence, the operational function of it. But it was something I fitted into quite nicely, and I learned a lot from it. So I'm not going to say it's a bad thing. That was about highlights in Gateshead, and then I moved on to DRP, and I've since moved on to ITR, but I'll mention them in a second. What do? I like to think that I make new things work. I work out why things that should work don't, and I convince people that the things we say will work will actually work. And I think that last comment is why I rely a lot on 3D modeling. It really does help convince people that what we say we can do, and what we say it will look like, it will actually look like. And when I say people, I do mean clients, but I also mean me. I mean internal teams. I mean, it does just put people's mind at rest that it's right. We can talk a little bit about that as we go on and look at some of the examples. What do I do? So I am a full-time employee of ITR and Immersive AV. I sit on the board of directors. This is quite cool. I don't fit nicely into a box. I never have, and I don't think I ever will. I've got a business card that says technical director on it. I have a title of creative director on the organizational chart, and my LinkedIn title says technical manager, as I'm sure some of you know. And I sit somewhere amongst all three of those roles. I do a bit of all of that all of the time. ITR, I should probably say a little bit about ITR and Immersive, because all of the case studies that we'll look at today are from them. I have used these skills in other companies, but this is my most recent experience, so I've put this in. They're primarily involved in the exhibition and experiential marketplace. Certainly Immersive are very high-end content, playback, projection mapping, interactive experiences. ITR very involved in the exhibition marketplace with crossovers into training, employee engagement, all of those kind of things. Not typically the kind of events that Mark and Safe Events get involved in, and some of the other webinars I've been at, we're talking more exhibition, conference, that kind of thing. I do have experience of working in greenfield sites. I must say the food is a lot better on corporate jobs, and that's what I enjoy to do. Okay, what do I spend my time doing? So I spend 40% of my time drawing, as I like to put it now. Drawing is not just, as I hope you'll see as we go through this, it's not just about physically drawing things inside of a computer. How much to talk about? When I draw something, it's almost a specification, a design, and a creative process all in one. So whatever we want to create, what we want it to look like, we use the actual components that will be used to do that in our model. So at the point of the model being finished and going, this is what it's going to look like, you can print a full list of all of the equipment off and cost it. There's no then, okay, well, how do we actually do that state? And I'll talk a little bit more about that, and we'll dive into some of the software that we use, and I can show you that. I spend 40% of my time working with a wider team, fixing problems and testing solutions, whether that be organizational workflows, actual technical problems, all kinds of things that you generally have to do while working for a business. 10% of my time doing site visits, or I used to until COVID hit, and I must say the site visits are the that's my favorite part. I love doing site visits. It's the most favorite thing, especially if I can get there when we're doing menu tasting. That is just heaven for me, traveling the world, doing site visits, love it. And then I spend 10% of my time with projects, and I'm pretty fortunate that I don't have to be ultimately responsible for those, although I think when I say that I'm kidding myself, because if it all went horribly wrong, the blame would probably get a portion to me, but it never has, so we're all good there. We've got a great team of project managers at both ITR and Immersive, and my role on site is to support and mentor them. If we're not going to bring on if we constantly do things for people, we're not going to have another generation to take over from us. I'm not planning on leaving anytime soon, but that is a big focus of all of my time, is bringing the skills that I have to other people, so that they can follow on in my place when it's time to do something different. Right, what is this talk about? There's only one slide on this, so we will get to it in a second. What's this talk about? Primarily, this talk is about events from a technical production point of view. That is what I have done for most of my life. That is what I'm comfortable with. Therefore, that is what I'm naturally going to gravitate to. I will hope, though, that you'll see that some of the elements that involve, that more of the elements that are involved from a non-technical production, from the health and safety, from down to the catering staff, how much room they need behind set, as many of those people can be involved as possible as early on, and can all have access to the model, contribute, and have input to it, critique it almost, the better the outcome will be. And I've got some examples of how more people should have been involved in some of the projects, and it would have stopped some of the problems on site that were very easy to spot when you look back at the model. There's some things that weren't done as well as they could have been, that were fixed on site. But if some people had other people had access to the model earlier on, those problems wouldn't have been there on site. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do: make life on site as easy as possible so we can get to the bar. Workflow. This is kind of okay. We're kind of diving into things now, so let me slow down for a second. I need to talk about how a project comes in and how we go from that project to getting to site, so that you can see what 3D modeling can add to that workflow, and how it can stop problems before they arise, before they get to site, and it can essentially make everyone be on the same page, if that's not too much of a buzzword. So everyone in the production team, and it's always a team, knows what we're doing and what we're trying to get to at the end goal. If they can see a picture of what we're trying to get to, it does sometimes focus people's minds quite well on what needs to happen. Okay. So if we take it from the point of view of a client brief coming in now, both ITR and Immersive, we generally are fortunate enough not to, I say this lightly, work with end users. We work primarily, quite often, as a white label production company for agencies or even other production companies. Especially Immersive have a lot of specialist skills that we almost sub out to other agencies to let they can rent our services. So we are quite lucky that we get the brief at the point where we can still change what's going to happen, but a lot of things are set in stone. You know, we know which country the event's going to be in, which is always a start, and we've got a rough idea of how many people are attending. We're going to be told it's between 100 and 500, or 5,000 to 10,000, not between 1 to 50,000. We have some parameters to work in, because the companies that we work for know what we need in order to come up with a concept or a cost. As soon as that brief comes in, we'll huddle with the internal team, and huddle is such a buzzword, I don't like using it, but it does kind of imply what we mean. There will be somebody from account management there. There will be a project manager there. If it's a big enough project, there probably will be a technical manager there, or even a lead technician. That's something that I've been doing recently on some of the big jobs, is taking a technician along to the site visit, along with an account manager and a project manager, and often me. And it really does help that project manager when we get to site. If there's somebody else that knows where the power is, where the loading is, where the toilets are, where the lift is, where the canteen is, and it's such a small cost for our business to take a technician out for a day, that on site it just makes everybody's life so much easier. Anyway, and they have another point of view. Another point of view is always welcome. So we'll come up in that huddle with what's the client trying to achieve. We'll obviously have some ideas on how we can do it. We'll look at the venues they've selected. We might even go through some past imagery of what we've done in that space before, have a good look on that venue's website, see what other people have done in that venue before, so we can get a feel of what's possible. We'll easily have a page of A4 questions to go back to the client with after that half-an-hour huddle session. It's inevitable. The brief it looks great, but we will have loads more questions, never be outlined in a brief. Once those questions are back, we should have a good idea of what it is they're trying to achieve and the parameters in which they're trying to do it. We'll always try and go to site if we can, and obviously if the budget allows. If this is for a £1,000 exhibition stand, we're probably not going to go and do the client. We'll do it remotely. It's too easy to do. If this is for a reasonable size conference or even a rather large exhibition stand, we'll probably travel to see the people building the stand or the actual venue. Love to get on site with the venue. It's so easy then to see how the client's mind works in the space, and we can so much better map what they want. While we're at site, I will generally try and measure the venue so I can redraw it. I have this thing where I don't trust plans that other people draw, and that comes from experience of the plans other people drawing being wrong quite a lot of the time. And I'll take enough measurements so that I can draw a plan that we can work from, and that's a point there that I kind of want to highlight. I've worked with a lot of people over the time that I've done this, and I've brought people's CAD skills up, I hope, quite a lot, and I've talked about CAD. And one thing with CAD in our industry is I always say to people, we're not trying to draw plans good enough to redraw the venue from. We're drawing plans good enough to get our stage in the right place when we get to site, and it not to hit the roof. We don't need to worry about being 10, 15, 20 mil accurate. We're not working to that tolerance. We're working to tolerances of 200, 300, 400 mil. It is really far. When we're taking measurements, don't be too anal about it. Just get enough to get a representation and check and know what you're going to build will fit. I think that's what I'm saying. Measure the width of the doors accurately. You know, that's a thing that is often, we'll talk about site visits for a second. There's a thing that's so easily forgotten is walk from the room to where the loading is and measure the width of every single door, because I can tell you there's more than one hotel in London where a standard flight case will not go through the way that the hotel will take you from the venue, from the room into the loading bay, which causes great fun at 3 o'clock in the morning with 2 Arctics parked under yellow lights. Anyway, okay, so workflow: huddle, question the client, try and get an understanding of what they're trying to achieve, attend site. And ideally, by the time you get to site, you should have asked the questions. You should have a rough idea. We obviously won't have a model at that point if it's the first site visit. We should definitely have a model by the time we get to the second site visit. If we do a second site visit, and the big conference I'm talking about at the end, we did do 2 site visits. So at the second site visit, we were able to take the model in VR and actually walk them around the initial concept. But I'll save that for the example at the end. So yeah, so we do a little bit of talking, talk about software, 3 examples at the end. Stay for the examples, they're actually quite good. After the site visit, so if it isn't possible to do a site visit, we'll obviously go to the venue plans and use them. Generally, they are in a PDF format or a DWG file that has that many layers. It's useless. Draw the venue in 3D as best we can. We will always do at least 2 options, even if they've said this is what I want it to look like. Always do something that looks completely different to what they look like. In my experience, at least 50% of the time they go for something that they say they didn't really want in the first place, but when you show them how cool it looks, they'll go, yes, I'll have that, please. And this thing that I've kind of said before, populate the model with the actual equipment that we're proposing. It sounds really simple, but it's so important. And that's the key to the workflow, working in how it works for us. We build a model with what we are going to use. Yeah, I've got another slide, so I'll talk about that. 80%, actually, I should probably say with ITR and immersive, 80% of the work that we do is video elements. So we do a lot of screens, a lot of LED walls. That's what I spend a lot of my time drawing, custom LED walls to fit around alcoves and things in hotels that I don't know how we get them to fit sometimes, but we do manage to shoehorn them in. That's why I spend a lot of my time doing. We do a lot more wider production. The example on the end, we did the full production package. So this is not just about video, it's about anything, okay? Right, populating the model with the equipment that we actually use. So the packages that I'll talk about in 3 slides time, both of them have a library section where you can actually pick what equipment you want to use. You're not putting a generic speaker there, you're putting a D&B E3, and even down to the point of you're not putting a 3 meter length of truss in, you're putting a piece of ProLite H30V in. It's the actual component that you will order from your supplier or get out of the warehouse to build that job. or very close to it. You know, you could swap a piece of ProLight for a piece of Milos, and it's kind of the same thing. But the point is, it has the same similar specifications. So in Vectorworks, which I'll talk about, they have an amazing program called Braceworks. You can take your 3D model from Vectorworks with all of your truss into Braceworks, and it will tell you if your truss is overloaded, if your points are overloaded. It will tell you how much more weight you can hang off each of the motor. It will tell you if you can drop from a 2-ton motor down to a 1-ton motor. That by drawing it in 3D in actual space, the amount of work that the package will take away from you having to do is phenomenal. It is amazing what these computer packages can do now. Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I'm not just when I design, when the workflow that we have, we're not designing things to look pretty. I suppose we're almost one stage on from that. The agency's already done the SketchUp concept and won the pitch to get the work. It's not nailed on what it finally looks like, and very often it looks completely different to what was pitched by the time it gets being created. But at the point we start designing, we're designing stuff that actually works. So if the client says, can you give me some options for a screen? Yes, we couldn't drop into Illustrator or Photoshop and make a screen look fantastic. Well, that's great, but that doesn't work for us. We drop into a modeling program and actually draw the screen using the 0.5 meter by 0.5 meter panels that are in the warehouse, and build the screen up that way, and then put the content on there that is the right resolution as well. That's something actually isn't in my slides, but I should probably talk about. So when we're putting content on the screen, we can put that content in at the right resolution, not at 10 times the quality. There's no point putting an 8K image on a screen that's only HD. When the client gets to site, they're very quickly going to realize that does not look like the renders. And also we can use that as a sales tool by using the right thing. You know, if a client goes, I've got budget for 6 lights. Okay, well, this is what 6 lights will actually look like. If you had 24 lights, this is what it will look like. Client says, I've only got enough money to pay for a 16mm screen. Okay, well, here's that lovely piece of 4K content you sent me on a 16mm pitch screen. Is that what you want it to look like? Or do you actually want it on a 3.9mm screen? And it's that, I think 3D modeling to me is all about conveying what something is going to look like actually to somebody, so they can understand what we're talking about when we say, no, you shouldn't do that, you should do this, this would work better. It just allows everybody to be on the same page, because it's very easy to forget that people outside of the events world don't have the experience that we have of knowing what things look like. I know what a 16mm pitch screen looks like. I know what a 3.9mm pitch screen looks like. You go to somebody outside of the industry that's booking an event, they have no idea. Absolutely no idea what the difference is and why one is better than the other. If we can show them a 3D walk around of this is what one looks like, this is what the other one looks like, it's clear as day. Okay. And yeah, I should probably put in my notes here that even at this point, nothing is signed off. So we are almost pitching for work, but fully designing it. And that might sound counterintuitive. And there's definitely a slide at the end where I've said, but is it really worth it? And we'll cover that when we get to that. But yes, I think it is. I don't think it takes me any longer to draw it with the actual components than it would if I was just trying to make it look pretty. It takes me no longer to hang 8 lights on a truss than it does for me to put 8 light sources in Blender or Cinema 4D and render it out. So I don't think it does take any longer. If you're going to go to the point of doing a model, and we generally do, then you might as well do it right the first time. I don't like doing things. I hate doing things twice. Just despise doing things twice. Do it once and do it right, and then do something else. That's my mantra in life. Okay. Wow, it's a bit passionate. So workflow. Once we've got a model drawn and we've lit it, we can then obviously send some renders. This is a little simple stage set that we did for somebody. Really nice client, actually. Like working with them. Very easy to get along with, and loves 3D because he can't visualize for toffee. So you send him a visual and he actually understands it. Share the renders with the client. We'll pass the designs over for costing at that point. So if it's a client we know, if it is the person that's in there, I know I can drop him a very, very, very quick screen grab. It doesn't need to be pretty, and go, what do you think, yes or no? WhatsApp is amazing for that. It seems like people don't care what the production value is. If you take a photo with WhatsApp and send it to somebody, love it. Very quickly get some response, yes, like that, don't like that. There's no point rendering it out if they don't like it. Once we're 90% there, At that point, it's very easy for me to pass it over for costing. In the first example, I'll just run through why that is so easy. But essentially, I can export a full bill of materials, a full set of plans, and a full set of pictures to a project manager or a technical manager and go, okay, this is what we're trying to do. How much would it cost them to do it? I've got from, I'm sure you all have as well, from the years of experience of us doing this, I can certainly design to a budget without working out as I go. That's just experience will tell you how much something is going to cost, I think. But then to give that to a project manager or a technical manager, like I said, and actually get a quote back that's pretty close, then you can see. And I think it's testament to how this workflow works that I generally get 5 minutes worth of questions after I've sent it, between me saying, can you cost that, and me getting a cost back. There's a couple of conversations to clarify some things, generally because I've been an idiot and not drawn the cameras on the model, but the project manager's seen in an email that I've said I'll get cameras. You know, that's the kind of questions that crop up. It's generally me not putting things on the model that I've told the client will do, than actually there being a lack of understanding. It is so easy to do it. The only other technical documentation that I can't find a good program to do is schematics. I can't. Yes, we can draw things. We can draw them in the actual place in the two programs that we've got, but actually plugging them in and then getting the software to do a schematic at the end, so you don't have to then do it in Visio, that would be phenomenal. And if anyone from Vectorworks is listening, that would be a great addition to your software packages. Okay, so we've got a quote now. So what have we got now? At the point in the workflow, we've had a brief, we've had a huddle, we've done a site visit, we've done a model, we've costed it. The client's seen a few renders. Depending on the size of it, we'll have a video call. We'll email them a nice proposal document. We might go and see them if they like us to go and see them. We'll talk it through. And at that point, while they're on the phone, even if they can't see it, we'll have the model open. We can whiz round. If they say, I like the stage, but it'd be better if it's 1/2 meter bigger, the packages we're using are so easy to double click on that and make it 1/2 meter bigger. We can almost update it in real time. The conference example we'll talk about, I'll probably mention it again then because I'll forget I've done it there. We took a laptop to every production meeting after the first one. After the first site visit, after the point we had a model, and I sat in the room and edited the model while we were talking about the model. So at the point of us leaving the conference rooms, we were up to date, and we were emailing DWGs out to the stand builders and the print guys before we'd left the meeting. Once you've got a baseline model, to change it into something else is a very, very, very quick process, and I think that's where the whole thing comes alive. You can sit around a table and talk about stuff and change it. It just speeds up so many conversations. Okay, I don't know if that made sense, but there we go. Why do we need 3D? So I hope that's pretty obvious. We need 3D because our world is 3D. People get a 3D world, if that is even the right grammar of getting something. You can show them a 3D visualization of their kitchen or their house or their new bed or their new sofa, and they understand it. If you show, I would say 95% of the general population a 2D plan, they would struggle to visualize what it's going to look like from that flat piece of paper, with the exception of probably every event prof who you can give a 2D plan to, and they can see it come alive in Olympia just off that piece of paper. And that is something that I certainly forget when I do 2D plans and sit them on a table and go, yeah, so that's that, and that's that. And you have 4 blank looks back at you because people aren't seeing what's in my head. But the other technical guy around the table is fully on board and is nodding along because they've had the skills and the experience to take that, to see what a 2D world looks like when it becomes 3D. So I think I might contradict myself when I say, though, we're not just doing this for end clients. This is this is a part of the production workflow, and we'll talk about it again in a conference example at the end. But there's real advantages to my team and our team and the events world of using this. This isn't just a sales tool, and although it is a great sales tool, in fact, let's go on to the next slide because that's essentially what I say there. 3D modeling makes the sale easier. It does make the sale easier. It's so much easier to buy something if you can see it. It's much more preferable, certainly for me, to go to IKEA, not when it's doing like it is now, and certainly not on a Saturday. But I like to walk around IKEA and touch and feel the things that I'm going to buy, rather than buy from their website. It's just human nature. We like to see things, and 3D modeling allows us to see what we're buying, where a 2D plan doesn't, or even a Photoshop file doesn't. But it also is a what to talk about. So yeah, so great sales tool, great for us to sell to our clients. It's also great for our clients to sell to their clients. It allows our client sponsors to see how big their logo is going to be, where their logo is going to be. It allows the sponsors to stand in the entrance and see why they should buy the platinum package that's right above the doorway rather than the gold package that's on the wall. It allows you to make those sessions. It's just the same as it allows us to upsell a bigger screen, a higher pitch, more lights, a smaller sound system, on and on and on and on and on. But it is also, I've even put this on the slide. Let's go to the next slide. It also means that we're more likely to get it right. Obviously, planning is the key to any great event. And by building the event in the computer, which is in essence what we're doing, it allows us to have a go at building it before we get to site. It lets us see if the truss that we've ordered fits in the roof. Yeah, it allows us to check so many things. So it's not just a sales tool. It is also a full production tool for us. We can also add mileage to the wider team. So we can check that exit signage can be seen from every seat. We can walk out of the exit route. So there's, for your safety consultants, we can show them what things are going to be like before they get to site, before we have to move a drape line, before we have to have signage reprinted. And it's also down to things like we can check the size of the screen, which is one of the examples. We can sit in every chair in the auditorium and look at the stage to check we can see what we want to see. It allows us to do so much, take so much worry out of it, worry that we're going to get it right. We can almost prove to ourselves that we're going to get it right. Prove that we haven't brought too much stuff, prove that we're not, I don't want to say ripping anybody off, because nobody tries to rip anybody off, but it's very easy to over specify. It's very easy to over engineer. Certainly that's something I am guilty of a lot of the time, of just making, I'll put a 75-inch screen instead of a 55 because it's better to be bigger than smaller. I'll put 2 hangs of line array instead of 1 line array because you might as well. We can always turn it down. It's very difficult to turn it up. And by modeling things, we can start to prove that actually, no, it doesn't need to be that big. It doesn't need to be that loud. We've got it right with what we've got, if that makes sense. Right, okay. I think that makes sense. I'm pretty sure it makes sense. Yeah. Software. So when I talk about software, this is most certainly not a webinar on how to draw a 3D model from an empty piece of paper. We would be here for months and months and months if I did that. This is a workflow and a why we should do it. I probably am going to start to tell you why I like some more than others, but that's just me. I don't mean to do that. I just will. If you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn at any time about anything, I'll say that, anything, connect with me on LinkedIn, drop me a message. I will more than happily spend as long as you want to talk about 3D software, talking about 3D software. And there is no right answer. So even if you want to say, I do it like this, what do you think? How I do it is not saying that how I do it right. You've got to do whatever works for you. And there's so many different packages out there that you should be able to find something that fits what you need it to do. And hopefully if we connect and we have a conversation, I can point you in the right direction. More than happy to do that. Okay. The first thing I am going to say is learn how to use AutoCAD. That is the most important thing. If you are starting out in drawing anything and you do not know how to use AutoCAD, learn how to use AutoCAD. I know Mark and I think Mark's obviously knows him better than I do. I only know from LinkedIn, there's a guy called Rupert who is doing some AutoCAD for events courses. I think he might be doing a webinar as well, and I'm sure that will help you learn. I haven't done his courses, but I've seen a lot of comments about them, and it's probably a good place to start. Essentially, I'm telling you to use AutoCAD because if you can use AutoCAD, I've found that you can use any single CAD program out there. They're all based around essentially how AutoCAD uses, or a very slight variation on how you should use AutoCAD. It's the first CAD package that I used, and it stood me in good stead. Now, saying that, I don't use AutoCAD. You'll see the two software packages on the next slide. AutoCAD isn't mentioned. AutoCAD doesn't do 3D very well. They have other programs to do that. And if I was going to use a 2D CAD package, I'd actually use DraftSight because I think it's a much better CAD package than AutoCAD is, but still learn how to use AutoCAD. I can only use DraftSight and the packages we talk about next because I learned how to use AutoCAD. And if all of the events wheel doesn't come back and you do know how to use AutoCAD, there's always jobs for people who know how to use AutoCAD. Future proofing. So, two software packages. These are the two that from the events industry I would recommend if you're going to use 3D. Vectorworks is a fantastic 3D CAD package, and when you add Spotlight in, which gives you all of the events libraries, it's really good at that. And then Braceworks, which I mentioned before, that lets you do all of your rigging calculations, it's phenomenal. The slight downside is it's not created solely for the events world. It's an architectural program or a manufacturing design program that has a few bolt-ons that make it work for events, and they're very good bolt-ons. Anyone that has used Vectorworks and knows the seat layout tool, where you draw where you want to put your chairs and how many chairs you want, and it will create it with all of your aisles based on the code that you want. It's phenomenal. But you scratch beneath the surface and it gets very complicated very quickly. As I said when I was doing my site visit about how we're not working to the tolerances to rebuild the venues, Vectorworks is capable of drawing your venue. It's used by a lot of architects to draw a lot of complicated buildings, which means it's great in some regards, but very slow for what we want to do in other worlds. And that's kind of where WYSIWYG comes in. It's not a particularly well-known piece of software outside of lighting and video design. It's made by a Canadian company called Cast, and it's phenomenal. I love it to bits. That's what I use for my workflow. You can get something that looks good so quickly in there. It's amazing. It started out as a lighting design program, so you could offline program your lighting show from your bedroom without you going to site, and then plug it in and it works, and it does do that very well. The CAD engine has been improved massively over the years. The video side of it now, where you can trigger content, you can make screen moves, you can take external sources, and it's fantastic. And at present, because of COVID, there's a free trial. So if you want to have a play with something, download that. There's a lot of YouTube tutorials from Cast about how to use it. It's very quick to get up to grips with. It isn't as advanced as Vectorworks. It won't do your rigging calculations for you because it doesn't have that underlying user base that Vectorworks does. It's a much smaller user base. It's events people, but I love it to bits. I do keep looking at Vectorworks, and I've done a whole load of Vectorworks university courses while we've been at home. But yeah, I don't know. There's still something drawing me back to WYSIWYG. There's still something that makes it, I think, the right program. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to talk about that, so we won't. This is hopefully getting into the interesting bit if you've been bored with the rest of it. Example projects. So I have put together 3 projects that we've undertaken either as ITR or immersive. We 3D modeled all of them. 3D modeling helped all of them, and they all went well. I'm obviously not going to put something that went badly. Not that anything has gone badly. I'm just saying these all went bad. These all went well. There's case studies on the ITR website at itr.co.uk for the last 2, not the open day. And Mark's got a link at the end for a YouTube video for the first example. So let's just go to the first example. So first example, I had a conversation with the owners of the business that essentially said, James, in 5 weeks we want to do an open day, and we don't know what we want it to look like, but we want to show off what we can do. I think that's the best way to describe the conversation. So this was back in 2017. So I'm going to share my screen for a second, but I actually put a note here that it's obviously 2017, so the 3D doesn't look as good as it does now. You've just had a play with it. No, I don't think it's too bad. So let's share the screen, and if it's really bad, well, tell me later if you really want to. So essentially, we had a 38 meter by 40 meter exhibition hall that we decided to divide up into a number of different areas. In essence, in fact, actually, let's just turn the lights up a bit so you can see. There we go. So essentially, we divided it up into a number of areas that are the different business skills. Now, we were pitching, or I was pitching this. There was actually 2 of us involved in the design. We were pitching this to the rest of the company, and even though it wasn't, we are an events company. Not everyone in the company is technical, you know. We have people of very different skill sets, all that wanted an input into what it looked like, how it looked like, and what we could do. And this kind of enabled us to do that. We were able to go, right, okay, we're going to have this central feature, right? Well, what's it going to look like? Okay, well, we can very quickly zoom in and go, right, that's what it's going to look like. That's where your person can stand to serve your refreshments from. That screen is going to have this content on. Now, there's no content on any of these screens just because of the age of the file, and I have no idea where the content's gone now, but all of the screen surfaces are actual screens in the program. So they're capable of showing content. So we can actually show the PowerPoint presentation on the screen in real time, in essence, just like this, and whiz around and go, look, that's what your PowerPoint's going to look like. It just enabled people so clearly to get it. And with our 5-week lead time, it was very important that we designed something that actually works. So in this model, you might see those purple lines. They're the steels in the roof. I came up with the sizes of the rooms based on where the steels are. So we didn't have time to go through an iteration of, look, this is how big we'd like this is how big we'd like that. Yeah, that's great. Then go, oh, actually, we can't do that because there's no steel there to hang the drape from. So actually, it needs to be here, and then go through a different iteration. It took that iterative process down from probably 5 steps down to 2 of, I don't like that, I do like that. And we got it right the second time. At the most of it we got right the first time. Okay, so we've got a 3D model. In essence, at this point, we've had the brief for we've had the brief to say we're going to do an opening. This was, say, this is the final model, but imagine this is concept 2. Concept 2's got signed off. Right, we actually need to do that now. Now, because this is not just a picture, because this is actual components, we can very quickly click in the presentation tab, and there we go. Okay, there's my layout for my central feature. I've marked it up with what plans. There's my screens. Yeah, but that's just a normal CAD, James. You can do that in any CAD program. You can do it in any CAD program. You can, but what you can't do in any normal CAD program is click on the data tab. We can kind of if you do it with blocks, but it's easier to do in this. This is basically easy. There we go. We've got a full list of every single lighting fixture. We can pull out what screens we've got. We can tell where they're pointing. We can print that out. We can also pull that across onto the plan. So all of the plans are fully marked up with all of the different circuit numbers, all of the different where they're plugging in. We could put focus positions on here if we wanted. So yeah, it's a lighting tool. All of the screens, I can pull out what content should be on there, so that we go to site, I can give someone, or I can give a list to somebody and the source files to somebody, and they can make all of the USBs up to the media files very quickly. Okay, I think you get the point of that. Right, I'm going to stop talking about that one then. If we want to go back to it, we can you can ask me in the notes, the questions at the end, and we can talk about any of these. I'll leave them open. So if you do want to revisit anything that we talk about in the examples, just flag it in the questions and we'll talk about it in the end. So that was a picture of the final thing, which doesn't look too dissimilar from the render. And like I said, there's a video on ITR's YouTube page, which Mark will link to at the end, if you do want to watch the video. It's a brilliant shot of me rolling some carpet out that I'm particularly proud of my motivation for. Okay, example 2. Let me just check what example 2 actually is meant to be. So example 2 is on a different level altogether. This is a conference that started out for 5,000 people. It got shrunk down to 3,000 people because of the cost of the international travel. And then it, I think we ended up with about 3,000 in the end, actually. But you know what the process is like. We're all events professionals, we get this. So let me click that button again, and you should now be able to see a well-known exhibition hall in London that has a curved roof. So this project, this is what really cemented to me that 3D modeling can help every element of a project. I think it's safe to say that if we hadn't 3D modeled this at pitch stage, and the pitch was a phone call to say, we're doing a conference and we'd like a big screen, can you help us out? That was the brief I got from the account manager, and I was really as much of the information that the account manager could get on the first conversation. We managed a second conversation, which was, it's at Olympia, it's for about 3,000 to 5,000 people, and we'd like 6 breakout rooms. What can you do? We came up with a scheme that actually looked different to this. I liked it better, but it probably didn't work as well as this one. So this was actual scheme 2 rather than even version 2 of the same scheme. So we had main plenary section, 4 breakout rooms there, 2 breakout rooms there, an exhibition by others, which worked really well. And this is where we were swapping files backwards and forwards. So he was doing primarily in 2D because it was shell scheme and some bits, some central features. But he sent me a DWG of those. We dropped that into the 3D model, went back to the client, and even though we were from two different companies, we were all working from my plan in essence. We'd move the shell scheme on my plan in 3D. I'd send him a new file and he'd update his stuff. It would be great to get him using WYSIWYG and us going backwards and forwards, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. So a few things with this. So if I say in the first, let's talk about the project, then I'll talk about the model, because this is quite an interesting model because it's Olympia. In the first meeting, we were talking about the 24 meter by 4 meter LED screen, and I got 3 people look at me around the table and go, yes, but how big is that? And I went to my default answer of, well, it's slightly less than 25 meters wide and slightly more than 23 meters wide. It's 24 meters by 4 meters. I don't know what you mean. And I quickly realized, I'd say 50% of the people in the meeting had no comprehension of what 24 meters by 4 meters looked like. And that was when the penny dropped of, I had to look out the window and there was a pub over the road. And I said, it's about as big as that pub is. And all of the faces went, oh yeah, that'll be big enough. And that was so strange. So the next meeting, we actually took a VR headset, and let's talk about VR. I hate VR, really do. It's overhyped and it doesn't work as well as you think it does. But for this project, VR was indispensable. Being able to take a laptop and a headset to a client and sit them at, essentially sit them. Oh, where am I? Over there, and then we'll go down. Sit them in that chair and go, okay, that's the back row on the left, on the last aisle seat. That's what the screen is going to look like. And all of a sudden, the smile to come on their face and go, wow, that's big. That's the answer that I expect. That's the reaction I expected when I said it's 24 meters by 4 meters. And VR enabled us to do that. VR also enabled us to reduce the specification of the job, as I talked about earlier. We actually had two 5 meter by 4 meter relay screens hung somewhere up there on either side, and we'd put them in the initial brief, and the client had signed off on them, was happy with the cost, happy with the location, and something just didn't feel right. I was having a conversation with Gareth, who was actually looking after the breakout rooms, and we both looked at them, and they were blocking the view of the main screen from somewhere. I can't remember where we were seeing them. We just looked and went, do we really need those? And we had a conversation of the merits of yes, it's great to be able to see. We think we do need them, but you know, it might be better to have them. And then I suddenly realized we had a VR headset. So we put a VR headset on, and me and him sat in different seats in the audience. We realized very quickly that we did not need those relay screens. So we went back to the client and went, look, you don't need those. Here's your money back. And they very quickly spent it on something else. So everyone was a winner. And the other thing for VR, virtual bar games. We've got a great 8-player multi-person VR bar games. It's the only VR game I've ever played that I'm over the moon with. Playing darts with somebody on the other side of the world in VR, phenomenal, mind blown. Anyway, they're my 2 use cases for VR. Everything else is rubbish. Bit of a sweeping statement there. So this model, this was a really tricky venue to draw because I'm assuming you know Olympia in the UK. Olympia in the UK is an old train shed. It has, I think it's an old station terminus actually. It has a glass roof. It has it's one of the most beautiful venues, beautiful Victorian arch, but it has a glass roof. So it's one of the venues that doesn't have a blackout. And that was very evident in our first meeting when the client was talking about the lights coming in and you'd see the beams. And I'm like, you're not going to see any of that. It's a 12 o'clock gig at Olympia. It's very, 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 very bright. So I managed to find I had some venue plans from Olympia that got me the structure, but there wasn't anything that really detailed the roof. But doing what I do whenever I can't figure something out, Googling it, I found an old website that was some historical record of the train shed curve, and I managed to get 8 heights off that, and then redraw the arch and extrude it down. And then I've actually made it a light emissive surface. So there's actual the roof of the 3D model, wherever it is there for you, it's there for me, there for you, is actually giving off light. So it's not an ambient light as such in the render. It's actually the roof is generating the light that you see. And then obviously we've got the stage lights as well, which makes it quite interesting. And this plan works really well from a point of view of like the breakout rooms were a bit small, and I was concerned that they were going to be tight. Oh no, there we go. I thought I crashed it then. I thought they were going to be tight, but we could, let the client decide. That's what this is for. Okay, you're now, and me moving this camera around. You can obviously do this as camera paths. I just haven't. I wouldn't do this if this was a pitch. Nah, it's not. There you go. You're sat at the back of the breakout room. Does that feel cramped to you? And they said no, that feels absolutely fine. We built it, got to site. I still think it was a little bit cramped, but they were happy. So everyone's happy when they're happy. While we're talking about the breakout rooms, though, I'm sure Mark and any of you other people who are involved in event safety will spot this. The safety consultant for the event wasn't involved as such in any of the meetings where there was a 3D model. And as soon as they got to site, they didn't like that we had a single fire exit there.
That's what I was about to suggest.
100%.
And I was looking, in case this was a trick, I was wondering, is there something else I should have spotted? But yeah, the one door in, one door out thing would be my issue.
One door in, one door out. And on site, we had to, these were all made with drapes, so it wasn't really a problem.
Yeah.
Move that, redo all the cabling, drop some fire exit signs. It probably lost us an hour and a half on site to put the extra exit in. But I think that highlighted to me, if the safety consultant had been at one of the production meetings where we had the VR headset, straight away, one in, one out. I don't like that. I'd like 2, please. Now, Olympia actually said it was fine because we were only putting, I think, 150 people in there or something. But the external safety guy, no, I'd like to, person, it was actually a lady.
To be honest,
It's
one of those things that it's not, to me, and I know some safety people view this differently. To me, the one door in, one door out thing, it's not a function of the amount of people in there. Because depending on how you trained or how you learned this craft, one of the things we automatically do in our heads or on paper or whatever when we're assessing a venue is assume that the main entrance is taken out of it completely. Whether that's a truck blocks it or it collapses or whatever. So in our brains, one of the first places we go is, right, main entrance is gone. Now what are we doing? So whether it's one person or 1,000 people, if your main entrance is gone and it's the only one, you're running into trouble. Now the beauty of that is, and it's interesting, you've highlighted something that we always say, which is just involve the safety people as early as possible, and we'll save you time, we'll save you hassle, because and we know with a shell scheme like that and breakout, we know how easy it is for you to pop another door in there and just plan cabling slightly differently. But to be the guy on site or the lady on site who suddenly spots it and goes, oh, I don't mean to be a dick, but you really need another door. Like, we know what we're saying when we tell you that on site. We know you're under pressure. We know you don't want to hear this.
Usually just as the local crew has walked out of the venue and all the technicians have their rucksack on, and you're dragging them back from the bar to go, no, actually, we're here for another 2 hours now, and all of the crew's gone.
We're not done yet. Interesting. Not that this would be an interesting conversation, and I mean interesting, not let's change shit. But even the layout of the breakout rooms and them backing onto each other like that and stuff. When you have fun conversations, usually at the bar, about worst case scenario situations, like if two of those screens that are backing onto the 1 second, Charlie, if two of the screens that are backing onto one of the other rooms just go up in flames, and how likely is it now that both rooms are caught up in that? And again, I had a conversation about it with a guy one time who had seen that happen.
Wow.
So it's one of his things now, obviously, whereas most of us would go, look, the likelihood of that quite slim. But like anything else, if you've seen it happen, it's top of your list of stuff, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got a great example of that, of never standing in front of the truck doors when you open them. When you open the back of an Arctic, always follow the door round with you, is something that somebody once told me. And they told me because something fell out of a truck and nearly actually did land on somebody, and somebody was injured. And I always, after that story, I don't know why, but I always did it. And then one day I opened a truck door and one of the stillages had moved and it fell out of the back door of the truck. And the other person that was with me suddenly went, I know why you do that now. I'm like, it's just.
But it's the same, and it's conversations we have quite regularly, especially during these webinars and stuff. It's about risk perception and you know, what's acceptable to certain safety officers or safety advisors versus others. It's all going to be based on your experience predominantly. So if you've been caught up in, like, I've had a light tower right outside the door of a cultural event when everyone's queuing go up in flames. So like that's overkill. If I say that to someone who's never seen it happen, they're like, come on, like, what's the likelihood of that?
Never happened.
Like, dude, I've seen it. And I've had to put it out with 3 fire extinguishers. So that's one of my things. Now, I don't overdo it, but again, if I arrive to a site and there's a fire or there's a light tower again, say that close to a queue, I am very likely to go, look, can we move that? I'll talk to whoever put it there. What's it there? What's it achieving? I have a tow bar specifically on my own Jeep, so I'll move it. Like, you know what I mean? I'll probably take on the job of relocating it, but I probably won't be happy that it's that close to a queue of people, because I've seen what can almost happen if you don't have the right fire extinguishers next door to it and all that kind of thing. So again, we're all basing it off our own experience. There's other people probably listening going, I've never seen that happen, and I've done way more light towers than Mark Breen ever has. Do you know what I mean? But you base it on what you've seen. Sorry, I jumped in there just to talk about the one entrance.
That's fine. 10-meter HDMI cables, while we're talking about this kind of thing, is my other thing. Everything in every spec says a 10-meter HDMI cable will work. And there are technicians out there that plug screens in with 10-meter HDMI cables every day of the week. I will never, ever, ever plug anything in with a 10-meter HDMI cable.
That's long. Is that long?
That is long.
Is that a long way for a signal to travel?
Technically, it says in the spec it will work, and sometimes it does. But I've had it not work on a major show, so never again. Anyway, there we go.
But again, if you don't have to do it at 10 meter, why do it at 10 meter? If you can do shorter ones,
Exactly.
Okay, here, I'll jump out again.
Okay, well, we've got one more example now. So, last example. Now, I've included this one for a very valid reason, obviously. So this was one of the strangest conversations I have ever had with anyone. I was in a marketing suite for a housing development in London. We were doing some projectors pointing down on the floor. I was there installing them, blending them, doing some very strange things with Brightside media players that worked amazingly well. But anyway, when a project manager rang me, so I nipped outside. And I think it's these conversations that really why I work in the events industry and why I love it. He said to me, James, somebody wants to build a Rubik's Cube out of LED. I'm like, okay, so I'm thinking 4 sides. Like, okay, well, that's only 4 sides. No, they want to do 6. I'm like, right, okay, and put it on a point. I'm like, oh, okay, that's probably technically we can. I think we can do that. Oh, and it needs to go outside. Oh, okay. So, how on earth do we start with that? So, we've been involved by an amazing digital agency in Bath, and yeah, they are in Bath. Amazing people, lovely people, some of the nicest people I've ever worked with. And they'd done some amazing concept drawings. So we kind of knew what we were doing. We just need to physically work out how to do it. So this is kind of a different use case for 3D modeling. We knew we needed to involve a structures company. This is not something that we would ever attempt to do in-house, a 4 ton of LED on a point outside. But for me to ring up a scaffolding company and go, I think you need to build this out a layer, and this is what I want to do, I knew I wouldn't get very far. So we actually drew it in, I drew it in WYSIWYG again, and quite simply do that. There we go. There's an LED cube glowing, and as you can see, I kind of did a rough frame and went, look, that's the kind of thing that we need. We're going to sit it like that, and then we're going to clamp onto it. So I need to do that. It's nearly seamless. Did a rough drawing of what they want it to look like, and then one day I was trying to work out. We needed to work out which way up the LED panels were going to go, because obviously we send a signal out that's maybe not obviously, we send a signal out that's kind of square, and then that gets interpreted into where the different panels are. And I couldn't for the life of me work out which way up the top 2 sides needed to be in order for the content to go the right way. And I tried to do it in 3D, and in the end I gave up. And I printed it out on a piece of paper and actually made a 3D model. So I think with this project, what I'm trying to say is we don't have to use fancy software all of the time when we're 3D modeling. Sometimes Paint 3D is great. Just doing something in isometric in PowerPoint is also brilliant. But making something and actually physically printing it out. And this is kind of the production model that we then used. You can see there was a couple of different ones, and I had them all on my desk for about 3 months. 3 months where I didn't get a lot of sleep. This was this stressed me out, this project. It really did. It was great fun, but it made me think a lot, which is what I love, but it really did make me think, how are we going to pull that off? And we had a lot of bracketry made and all kinds of bits and bobs. This was really cool, but yeah, these models lived on my desk, and there was a lot of video calls to the agency going, okay, well, if you do it like that or like this or like that, and then to the scaffold company, okay, can we mount it like this or like that or like that? And the 3D model, not a computer 3D model, but the 3D model really did help the process. And I've got some photos of us in a scaffolding yard actually building it there, and then there's the actual thing on South Bank in London. I think how big is it? I think it's 2 meters by 2 meters by 2 meters. It was quite a size when it was up. Okay, anyway, so there are the examples. So what have we got now? We've got a couple of slides left. Let me do any questions if you've got any. But doesn't it just take too long? And that's something that I fight with in my head quite a lot. Am I wasting my time doing this? Now, yes, I am sometimes, and no, I'm not. If we win the project, definitely not. No waste of time really adds to it. If we didn't win the project, to some extent, and the conversion rate is ultimately whether it's going to work for you as whether it would work for you as a workflow. I think it kind of works for me because I'm engaged in projects that have a likelihood of coming off. If people have come to us, it's because they trust us to do it, certainly from an immersive point of view. I should probably say these are my views, not necessarily the views of the company. I'm merely an employee after all. But I think if clients come to us and engage us in a project, it's got a good chance that they've come to us because they want us to help. So that helps. And also, even if we don't win the project, the amount of new schemes that have come out of old, the amount of times I've drawn I want to say the Hurlingham Club in London, but it might not be there. Went and did a site visit, did a full set of drawings, loads of renders. The client we are working with is generally engages us every time. Great, a lot of effort in, a lot of effort in, a lot of effort. Right at the last minute, their client pulled out and went with somebody else. So wasted all that time. 2 weeks later, another client rings me up. I'm thinking of doing an event at the Hurlingham Club. Have you been there? Yes. Would you like me to send you some pictures? Within half an hour, I changed the logos on the screen, and he had a full set of renders in his inbox of, oh my God, this is amazing. You know, I don't think we ever waste our time. We always, as long as you learn something from it, it's never wasted. It's never a waste anyway. Have I missed anything? And what's the future? I think I should probably talk about this because we've talked about today hybrid CAD and 3D. That's kind of what we've talked about. We haven't, even though the title says 3D modeling, yes, we've talked about modeling an event in 3D. We haven't talked about 3D modeling programs. And there is a distinction between the two. So the more models are being used for more. Even now, I'm exporting stuff out of WYSIWYG. It has to go through another program to then get into the media servers, but then, you know, we can draw a cube, the simplest a cube in WYSIWYG. We can put that into our media server. We can point to projectors, and the media server knows the geometry of the curve of the cube that we've built in 3D, and we'll adjust the projection onto all the sides. Really clever. Do it with buildings, whatever you want. Okay. The events world is going to be more 3D. We're going to start using it if we do start doing AR, so people can hold their smartphone up to a festival stage and see corporate overlays or information about songs or biographies of the band or whatever through an AR medium. That works great if you've got a 3D model. Through to XR, where we're mixing live and hybrid, you're going to need 3D models for that. 3D is going to become more of a part of our world. And it's not necessarily, it isn't going to be the programs that I've talked about. It isn't going to be, at present, it isn't the Vectorworks and the WYSIWYG that lets you do that kind of stuff. You do need to be in a 3D modeling program. Things like, should we talk about that? Let's talk about that. So that's one of the problems that we've got at present. There isn't this, there's this disconnect between CAD and drawing things to build them in the real world and actual 3D modeling programs like Blender or Cinema 4D, where you're building things for the virtual world. There's workflows to get both ways, but in all honesty, they don't work very well. If you want it in CAD, draw it in CAD, and if you want it in 3D, draw it in 3D. Generally, you'll spend more time trying to make your model work from your CAD package than you will actually just drawing it for straight in your 3D modeling program. So like I said, not what I've talked about here. This is actually making a 3D model to use in a virtual world or in an animation, not 3D modeling what we're going to do in the real world. There's a difference between the two. And what I'd love to see is that will come together a bit, and either the workflows between the two programs get better, or the 3D CAD programs add in the functionality of the modeling programs in terms of splitting a surface apart and putting different things on different faces, or the modeling programs having better CAD engines so that we can draw accurately in the modeling programs and just use that. I don't really care which one we use. I just don't want to do things twice again. And then you move on to the whole world of Unreal Engine, which Fortnite's made in. It's so much more than Fortnite. If you look for the Mandalorian filming that on YouTube, there's some great behind the scenes footage where they actually built a massive curved LED wall, then did the content in real time in Unreal on that back wall and filmed it, tracked the cameras, which we can actually do in our studio now. So as you move the camera, the virtual world moves around the wall. So you're filming a screen that's moving as you move the camera. And that takes a lot to get your head around quite how that works and how to use it. But when you get your head around it, it looks phenomenal. But anyway, but Unreal and Notch is a slightly different thing that lets you do 3D effects, but very quickly. They're both rendering in real time. So we can output to a camera or a screen as it's happening. That is the future of 3D. Real time is the future of 3D. I can see us doing site visits where we've got a camera in the room and we're capturing a client or we go to a site visit and we stand in the middle of Olympia and we put a camera on them and then show them on the screen, them panning around, and they're in the space, and it can't be far away. I've just actually talked about the slide already. Yeah, a program. This is what I want for the future. A program that's as easy, as accurate as AutoCAD to draw things, but is capable of producing visuals as good as Unreal in real time. And I really, really, really hope that the two worlds of designing and drawing for the real world and designing and drawing for the virtual world converge rather than split apart. I've got a horrible feeling they're going to get further apart, and that would be bad for us. But then, how many worlds actually combine the virtual and the real into one? I think the events world is one of a few where actually we're just as keen to do things live as we are broadcast them or do them on a website. You know, we have a lot of crossover, and I think that's something that COVID has certainly forced us to explore more than some of us would like to admit. Okay, Mark, I think that is my last slide. If there are any questions.
Super. I'd say close that down then, and it'll pop you and me bigger on screen for people,
There we go.
which might look a bit. There we go. I'm going to put that video you were talking about live as an offer, folks. You'll be able to grab it there. I'd say click on the link and have it in another window and watch it when we're done. It's about 7 or 8 minutes long, but it's really good. And again, I think it's a lovely way to kind of finish that discussion of it as an example, for people to watch that video and see how it kind of was realized. There was one of the most recent questions that come up in the chat was from Desi, who works with us.
Yeah, I've literally just clicked on the chat thing and seen it. Yeah.
He immediately he had marked his questions and immediately went, okay, that's answered. I'll take that off. That's not a question anymore. So I'm going to do what I normally kind of do. Actually, first thing I'm going to do, which is put your hand up to request to speak if you want to thing live, just in case anyone does want to do that. I'm going to go back towards the questions that were earlier on that I've written down so I wouldn't forget them, and then we can come to the more recent ones there. Alan was wondering, are any of the 3D plans you guys would do, or is there software that lets you actually animate them? Can you? I don't know what exactly he means like that. Can you do kind of like, I presume you can do like fly throughs and export a video that a client can just watch and see the whole room?
100%. That is where how I was talking about the distinction between 3D modeling and what we do. If you want a full fly through, export it into Blender or Cinema 4D or 3D Studio Max and actually render it out. But what you can do inside of WYSIWYG, and I'm going to say 80% sure you can do it in Vectorworks, is set up what's known as a camera path. So you in essence draw where you want the camera to go, and you tell it to zoom in and zoom out, and then essentially play it back and record that and send to them. That's what we did for the conference at Olympia. That was what the client got back.
Very good. And again, I've seen those, and personally, again, I'm quite visual.
Yeah.
But I'd always enjoy that as the first introduction, and I'd probably end up still with questions as a client. Yeah. But for a few minutes to be able to just kind of be taken on a journey through, it'll answer a lot of the questions I'll have had, which I could wreck your head with if we just sat and kind of poked through it and you zoomed in and zoomed out. I think that video would be a great starting point. All right.
Yeah, and that's very quick to do, but isn't always the best of quality. Whereas if you want to go to the modeling software, it's complicated to do, but amazing quality.
So I guess it probably depends on what the client wants from it or what you want them to get from it. If they're the type that need to see how amazing this will look, you're going to go to the modeling software. If it's someone who just says, look, bring me from customer journey, start to finish, and then we'll look at how pretty it is, but bring me on the journey.
If I'm showing it to an agency to show that's where registration is, that's where the kiosk is, that's how big the door is, and that's how big the screen is, the CAD software side works great. If it was an agency pitching to a client, they would do a proper render.
They'll need a prettier render.
100%.
Alan's jumped back in there. It was a camera path. He was kind of talking about, can you do that?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. If you want to have a play, download WYSIWYG again. The learning curve on WYSIWYG is so much less than most CAD packages, which I think is why I like it. So if anyone just go to
I popped the link in earlier on actually, just in case. I know nothing about it, but I just grabbed the link and popped it in so people could have
it. Yeah.
It's interesting though that the learning curve isn't as steep. I think that might interest some people just to wrap their heads around what all this stuff is.
it is built for the events world. So like cubes are called risers, and cloth is called drapes, and there's a theatre builder, and it puts a proscenium arch in. And you try finding a CAD package that knows what a proscenium arch is. You know, I think that's why I like it, because it makes me feel like I'm on site when I'm using it.
Did you say it started? It was lighting design, really.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Like
100%.
it started in the event world. That's where.
It's 100% started offline lighting. It started for your concert. Concert touring is a bad word. Theatre production or concert touring, where you don't have the money to pay for pre-production.
Right.
So you arrive on site, and 4 hours after the get-in, they want to do a tech rehearsal. That's kind of where it came from. So you could use it beforehand to plug your lighting console in, to program your theatre show, get to the theatre, and off you go.
Right.
Yeah.
It's up and running that quickly. Then you can just go with it. Yeah.
But it's come on so much more from there. Certainly the video side of things is what we primarily use it for, and you can very quickly put clips in, and like you do it. I'm going probably into the software more. Maybe we should do a webinar on WYSIWYG, but you can do a curved screen and then split it up into sections, and then you drop the video in. It'll split the video into sections. So
WYSIWYG would be delighted if you did a webinar on WYSIWYG.
I'm sure they would, sure.
Maybe you should talk to them about that. There's another question. I think it might actually have been from Alan as well, but someone definitely asked, is there a benefit to being able to put sorry, there's my plaster. Isn't it lovely? What is that? It's frozen. My daughter put that on me. She often puts them on me when I don't need them, but I did actually need this one. I cut myself getting apple for her earlier on, so she was delighted with it.
I cut my hand on a Stanley knife the other day and went under the sink and ended up with a unicorn plaster on my hand. Don't know where they come from.
Yeah, it just happens. The house is full of them. I wouldn't know where to get a normal plaster in my house, but I know where these live. What was I saying? Sorry. Yeah, is there a benefit with the 3D software? And I can see the benefit on my end, but do you guys do it much of being able to pop crowds in and pop people in that real time when you're doing something that's you want it to be so representative? Is it good then to be able to put people in the space? Because a lot of people, you were describing how some people can't picture anything, and you tell them the size of the pub over there. Like a lot of us can't picture people in a space either.
If I go, yes and no.
Okay.
I think
I'm interested. Yes and no. Very good.
100% for you. No, I think no is from a we don't do it, but 100% I could see from your point of view of being able to put a crowd in a space and going, look, I know your capacity says 1,500 people, but there's no way they're fitting in here. But from our point of view, that's why those two people are there, because I got sent a drawing of that central feature, and the client was going, what size screens do I need? Well, I sent them back 4 options and we were still none the wiser. So in the end, this was the last option, but I did every option of screen with a person stood next to it and sent them back and they went with the middle one. So yes, 100% people in the space work.
Do that quite well. Is just that for perspective, that person against screen or person against rise or whatever. I get that. That's very
person in doorway, so you can see how big your aisles are. You know, and this Olympia job was so difficult for that. With it being so huge, you were drawing aisles on a 2D plan, and they looked tiny because they were actually 4.5 meters wide. But when you look at
driving a truck down them,
you could easily drive a truck down. At one point, we did, but it's so easy just to lose it. Concept of scale. People in drawings is always good. Always put a person on the stage. Always put a person on the stage.
No, 100%. And to be honest, I mean, Alan is in here, and we talk regularly about people who are very visual, and you know, it's some people just need that. They need the help. They need the person beside it. Like I would do it as standard, I think, and because some people don't even know they need that, but it's definitely helpful when you see a normal 6-foot guy or whatever beside something, and it gives you your sense of scale automatically. You may never even have went, I don't understand scale, please put a person beside it, but you'll definitely get the benefit of seeing it. Chris is asking, could you then animate the crowd to predict movement flows? There's definitely software that does that.
There is software.
It'd be taking your CAD or taking your WYSIWYG and bringing it into something else to do that, but they exist for sure.
100%. And you can animate things in it. I can make things move. That's more designed for your motorized screens that come in and out, or curtains opening, or stage revolving. So yes, there is some animations elements. I wouldn't like it to animate 1,000 people. I imagine it probably
would. And to be honest, Chris, I'm not sure where, I suppose what angle you're asking that from, but generally speaking, and this is a whole different topic and a whole nother webinar if we ever do it, but simulations and people simulating crowds, and they can be useful, but whether you make decisions based on them, and agents in simulations, how they move, whether that's akin to how real people move, is fascinating. Someone, and I'm annoyed now, I don't know who, someone is doing some research, and I did this, a load of us on LinkedIn and Twitter have done it, where he has modeled, I think it's a he, has modeled just, I think you look at 12 video clips of animated agents moving around a space. 6 of them, I think, are real. They're just real people were monitored in the space, and then it was animated. And the others are just animated from someone's head going, here's how I think agents would move. And the challenge then is you do it really quickly. You go, that's real, that's animated, that's real, that's animated. And I swear to God, I've seen some of the best safety advisors around the world do this and put up on Twitter, I got 2 out of 12 right. Or I got 1 out of 12 right. So while I am always skeptical of simulations and them being accurate as to how crowds move, loads of us look at the challenge like that and get it wildly wrong. Yeah. The way we think crowds move sometimes isn't how they move. So I think simulations can be weird that way, but from a visual perspective, definitely helpful. Or to be honest, and I wasn't even thinking of animating them, I was thinking from the perspective of, as you were kind of saying, 1,500 people, plonk them in, or 200 people, plonk them in, and just see how much the space fills. Because I've seen clients who, when they realize, the venue says they'll fit 5,000, so we're going to sell that many tickets, and you go, right, well, plonk 2,000 people in the space. I go, Jesus, that's busy. I'd struggle to get to the stage, wouldn't I? I'm like, exactly. So keep that kind of thing in mind. Someone did ask, go on.
And the other old adage of, you can see whether the band's going to fit on the stage as well.
Always helpful.
I mean,
deciding a stage without knowing the band is an interesting one.
Yes, and it'll never be big enough, because it never is big enough when they arrive. But at least
bands are like a gas; they'll fill whatever space you give them.
Yeah,
they'll always manage smaller, but they'll fill it if it's there. Yeah,
and a little bit more. And a little bit more. They'll always be a car case on the stairs or something.
Give me the wings. Yeah. If I can fit the case there instead, I'll leave it instead of going in the wings.
While I've got this open, I did spot. Yeah, I spotted a question about, do you ever model front of house areas on the plan?
Yes, I've written that one. Do you want to?
So
it's a good question, because did you have some there where we would expect there has to be a front of house or a tech production, but it wasn't actually in what you would have shown us?
Yeah. So on this plan, here is the blue square for video control backstage. There is the I'm screwed. I'm drawing.
Sorry, are you talking? Yeah, screen share that, and
I'm doing it on this one, not that one. So there's the video production area there. That's how much room we need.
Hold on, we're not seeing whatever you're seeing.
There's the green, the little green
screen share thing there, so we know what we're all looking at it.
And then in each of the breakout rooms, we did block off an area for chairs and tables. Yeah. So yes.
So it is. That's what the point is, and it was an interesting question, because it was obviously specifically about front of house, because a lot of us, if we work on the production side, we think of that, and it's often never figured into anyone's plans, like that space. But I suppose the point of doing the 3D model at all is to put in anything that takes up 3D, like that will physically be there. Otherwise, if you're picking and choosing what you put in it,
you might as well not anything.
Yeah, you're not actually giving the client what you're trying to do, which is, this is what the space will look like. And actually, there'd be nothing worse, I'd imagine, than selling them on the pretty 3D model. For whatever reason, you leave out front of house, and then they arrive on the day and they're obviously in front of the house. What the fuck? What's this thing? Like, this wasn't on my beautiful plan. So you're probably on a hiding to nothing there. Which actually brings me to an interesting question. Someone asked, is there a risk that 3D modeling actually raises clients' expectations too high? You started off talking, like, a lot of this, it's good for, and one of the first thing I actually wrote down in my notes was expectation management.
Yeah.
So 3D is beautiful for that, because you can always go, well, that's what I told you it would look like, and that's what it looks like. So what are you freaking out for? But again, do people then expect too much, or can they only ever expect, well, exactly what I gave you in the 3D?
In my experience, from rendering in WYSIWYG, it's never not looked different to how it does in the real world.
Really?
Yeah.
So it will always look a bit different.
Obviously, I think it always look a little bit different, but it always looks close enough that there's been at least I'd say a job every 6 months where I actually stand there and on my phone find the pitch document and kind of go, I can't really tell the difference between those two. And there was a great one where actually the client wasn't. The production manager it was a very, very, very strange job where the production manager turned up 17 hours after we started building, which was strange for a start, and then wasn't particularly happy. And then it's almost
Should
at
have
the
been here
point,
17 hours ago then.
that was a start. That would have been a start. And then almost I felt like going, look, it looks exactly like I told you it was going to look. But then you very quickly realize, well, that doesn't matter anyway, because if they're not happy,
now you're here and you need to make them happy.
We need to make them happy, and I think that's
frustrating though, when you like the point of giving them putting all this time and work in is so you can, if it comes to it, go, I've given you exactly what I said I'd give you. But what are you not happy with? Please let me fix it for you. But let's be clear, I've given you what I said I'd give you. Yeah. But again, these are not conversations you want to really be having.
No. But a night shift, and he was happy at the end of it, and he said sorry the next day. So it's all good. But
someone, Alistair had asked, actually, there was a question, there was just a bit of a chat there about when we started talking about the safety stuff and the one door in and one door out thing. And he was asking, it's like, can you model in kind of safety stuff? I don't know exactly what he's asked. I suppose you can model in, like, you're modeling the widths of routes, you're modeling doors in, how many doors, all that. What
sizes, so we can check that we can see how big it is, because I've been on a few events where the fire exit signs have been reprinted once they've been hung and gone. Actually, no, that's the height of them. So there's
the height of them would be a big thing.
So there's none of this standing there as the riggers move them up and down. You can actually give them a full list of, this is where they're going, this is the trim heights to the bottom of the banners, all of that kind of things. I suppose where you want your fire extinguishers,
I mean, it's again, for us on the safety side, it just comes back to just involve us as early as you can. And we know when we say that working on a project with the likes of you guys, and you're doing the models and you're doing all that, we know that when we say, look, involve us early, we're probably going to see multiple iterations of a room, and we may end up doing that. We had it with a huge project last summer, and I reached a point where I went, okay, stop sending us stuff until you're much closer with every single stakeholder to near the end, because I can't keep doing the same work for you, and I can't keep advising, look, if that marquee there, you need to put another exit in, but then the next iteration you've moved it and now it doesn't need, like, it was a really complicated project and things change so regularly that I was nearly sorry I had said, please involve us from the start, because I had to trust the production guys eventually and go, do me a favor, hold on to it until you're much closer and have sign off from most of them, because there's no point me continuously telling you what I think we should tweak or change when it'll be different 3 days later anyway. So we did a few iterations and then went, right, come back to me when you're 80% there, and that worked way better, because we know when we say involve us early, there's huge benefits to it, but then on certain projects you end up redoing the same work all the time, which is kind of pointless for everybody as well, especially with a client who has to pay for the time. But we would, generally speaking, give us a look early, because we'll spot something that we've had it happen. Simple things, and that's a good example, is how many doors into a breakout space. And we know, because it's a build and you can make the breakout space whatever beautiful way you want, more doors isn't a problem. More doors is only a challenge maybe when you're already on site and have it built. And as you said, the lads have gone to the bar because they think they're done. That's when it stresses everyone out. And there are certain things, and we'd be like you in that like, we'd work with clients and we'd work with people, and we'll try and have the solution for you before we even point out the problem. But there are certain things you can't let go and have to just be fixed. And it doesn't matter whose fault it is. It doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. But as you said, they need to be happy now, whether it's what you told them it'd be or not. You now need to make them happy. And we're like that too. We're like, yes, that's, you didn't send us this version of it where you took the door out, and that door definitely needs to go in. So you're coming back to someone with, right, here are 2 things we just have to change, and here are other things that I'm going to tweak for you and fix, and they'll be better, but we need to change these 2 things. And I know I'm breaking someone's heart here, but they're things we can't let go. Do you know that kind of way? But the earlier you're involved, the more you spot stuff like that. I actually, by the way, I made a note here, so I would say this. I love the practicality of deciding the size of rooms based on where you know the seal in the ceiling is. That's brilliant.
Why would you
especially on a short turnaround for a project? Like, I'm going where the steel is. That's it.
That's where it's going.
How did you decide the size of that? They'll think it's complicated. We're like, see the steel beam. That's how.
And you could tell when I sent it across to the riggers, the loading plan, you could almost see them look at it and then look up and then look at it and then look up, and they're like, we're going to have an easier day today than we thought we were going to. Yes, you are.
One of the best things you can do on a job is keep riggers from stressing out and being upset, especially when they're up at height. You don't want them annoyed up there, like. So if you can keep their workflow fairly straightforward.
Everyone's happy.
I've learned, and I mean everyone. And again, we have some characters over here that do rigging and stuff, and you're like, if I can just keep him from flipping out, and everyone will be fine.
I think there's a type of person that's a rigger anywhere in the world, Mark, and they're lovely people.
You may be right.
And I have dabbled in climbing and doing bits and bobs as most technicians have, but I am not a rigger.
No, I think you need to be a certain type of person to be that rigger, all right. So I think they'd be quite happy to be looking up, going, bang on the steel. This is amazing. I'm looking through.
That just highlights a part of the 3D modeling thing of what I'm saying is sometimes we make things more complicated than they need to be because we're not fully looking at the bigger picture. Like, I'm sure if we'd have not looked at where the steels are, those breakouts rooms would have been about the same size.
Yeah.
But they might have been half a meter bigger in one direction, half a meter shorter in the other. But that would have never have got changed in relation to the steels if we hadn't have had a plan with the steels on. So I think if we just need to involve, like you said, involve everyone and make things as easy as possible for ourselves.
It's about having that information's key to everything. You know where the steel is, so if it's not negatively impacting everything else, let's go in line with the steel. It makes perfect sense.
Of course it does. The screen is in the Olympia conference. That screen is where it is because it's directly under an arch.
Perfect sense. Yeah.
Outback are an amazing rigging company, and they're in-house at Olympia. Yeah. They could put that screen wherever I wanted in that venue, but it works directly under an arch. So why not have it directly under the arch? It
gives you a starting point to work your design and your build back from. Then if you can just kind of in your head drop the screen exactly there.
100%.
I think it's worth mentioning as well, and you made this point early on, and I made a note of it, but I was interested to hear you say about the tolerances you work to, and that like you're talking about scale here, so you don't need things to the millimeter. I think you said something, 200 mil to 400 mil. Like you're talking about half a meter nearly within. For lots of things within a half a meter, you're going to be
certainly
safe.
In the kind of events that you work in. God, I've worked in festival. If you get a marquee within about 3 meters of where it is on the pattern in the old days before Rupert came along with his GPS thing, it was pretty good going.
Damn you, Rupert. But 100%. And again, normally in greenfield you do have the space for that. So in greenfield quite often it's much more about things position in relation to other things as opposed to exact measurements and because it'll be down to sight lines and it'll be sound spill and all sorts of things. Rupert says sorry. We know you don't mean that, Rupert. So there's no point even pretending to say sorry. I have a question.
Yeah.
I have two questions. One you can probably answer easier than the other, but the other loads of people want to ask is how expensive is it to 3D model stuff? And more importantly, and possibly easier to answer than that, like how time consuming is it to take a 2D plan? And I know it depends. It's how long is a piece of string, but from a project perspective, if someone if a PM comes to you and says, look, here's a project, we only need it in 2D or whatever, that's all you need, and they come and they say, I have to have this in 3D. In your head, what kind of a time commitment more do they tend to be to render in 3D beautifully for someone?
Drawing it in 3D, I would say probably takes me 25% longer than drawing it in 2D.
25, okay.
Because all I'm doing is adding a height component. I've still got to draw it, got to draw the length, got to draw the width. I'm just adding a Z axis in. It's not really that much longer. And like I said, because I'm using real things like in WYSIWYG, I'm not drawing those chairs. I'm going to a library and I'm picking a banking chair. I'm not drawing that stage. I'm telling it it's a riser that's 4 meters by 5 meters. So actually, it might not even be 25% more to draw it in 3D than it is 2D. To make it look
25 good. Is the upper. Like that's less than I thought. Like, what do I know? But I would have thought it takes longer. But I suppose if you're doing, like, you're right, 2D, you're just adding one more dimension, and if you have the software to do it, you're grand. But it's just one more dimension, I guess.
You definitely need to be able to think in 3D.
Right. Okay.
If you can drive a cherry picker, cherry picker, not scissor lift. If you can drive a cherry picker, you'll be able to draw in 3D. But those people that I'm sure you've met that can't work out how to get from one place to another place in a cherry picker won't be able to draw in 3D.
Stay away.
Yes.
There's a few people, Rupert, that making the point about it's the rendering in 3D that actually takes the time.
So what I'm showing you, let me share that again. What I'm showing you here, this is a real-time generated view. So this is not rendered.
We're not seeing whatever you're looking at. So you do
it should be.
Share? No.
Am I not sharing my screen?
No.
It says I am.
Everyone's still looking at you and me. Oh, sorry. Actually, I've looked at my testing over. Actually, hold on. No, you're not. No, I'm still looking at you and me. Lads, tell us, are you guys seeing his screen or are you still looking at me? Oh, Rupert says he's seeing it. Maybe there's something weird going on my end. No, people are seeing it. Work away. You keep talking. I'm not seeing it for some reason, but as long as other people are, it's all good.
So this is not a rendering. This is actually generated in real time on the graphics card. So the quality of that I'm finding now is good enough to take just a screenshot and send it to clients. They're kind of happy with that. So the rendering doesn't add any time in that. It isn't rendered. It's rendered in real time. You can do photorealistic renders. They obviously do take time. Yes, 100%.
But that's great that at that stage, that's usually good enough. Like you don't even have to spend the rendering time. Now you probably would for big pitches, but to just be able to run it by a client, and as you said, in a WhatsApp, and go, Jesus, I love that.
Exactly what I was going to say. I am more and more taking photos of screens on WhatsApp and going, is this what you want? Does this look good? You're literally
holding your phone, taking a photo of what's on.
Yeah. You'd be amazed. They'll accept anything. And also just pressing the record button and moving it around. But that's fine that's almost fine for who we're generally dealing with.
And if they know you and trust you, and it's
an agency, that's absolutely fine. Or even if I'm in an end client group, because it's on WhatsApp, they seem to appreciate a lower production value. If they receive that over email, they go, "This looks terrible."
Yeah.
But I think certainly once we've done 1 or 2 jobs for these people, they become involved in the workflow, and they know that has a point in the workflow of a quick right. I'll spin you around. I've moved that screen up 2 meters. Does that look good or not?
Yeah,
that's what that's for. If you want it proper to send to the CEO, I'll rend you one out. Not a problem. It's that work.
Isn't it amazing though, with all this software, all this technology and everything, and sometimes we're just taking a picture of what's on the screen and WhatsApping it for free to people. Like it's
why make it more complicated?
Make use of. But that's one thing I enjoyed about your session actually is a lot of it is like, and it was another point I made a note of, and it was the last one I wanted to come back to because it works in our world too. You said like not everything has to be 3D modeled and beautiful. Like sometimes you're drawing stuff on paper to figure it out, like the cube thing, and just to be able to figure it out. Like in some of the safety training we do with people, they're looking at us all funny. But a lot of the tools we do risk mapping where it's literally get some greaseproof paper and some coloring pencils, and your CAD plan, like to print out of your CAD plan, and what you can learn and use and figure out doing stuff like that. Not everything needs to be some very expensive, very fancy computer program. There are use cases for it, and there's times you might need them. But to figure something out or to visualize something, quite often paper and pen still do it for you. And
that cube, I mean,
Chris said, keep it simple if you can. Yeah.
Everyone loves arts and crafts hour in the office. So I had a cube for like 3 to 4 days as I was doing that. I had a constant queue of people go, "What are you doing? Do you need a hand?" Yeah, okay, some scissors, cut this out. And we had missed about 8 different cubes, but it was so quick to be able to go, right, that doesn't work. No, that's the wrong way up. Right, what if we do it like that? Okay, what if we do it like that? Yeah. To do that in a computer program actually would have taken more time than it did to do the model.
And plus, for some things, that tactile element,
and
it's a different way of your brain figuring something out too. It works.
We took that paper model to the scaffolders because it's all designed by layer, so it all worked really nice design. But the actual mounting is for scaffold clamps, for double strength scaffold clamps. So that angle can be whatever it is. So to be able to take the little holder and go like that and go, right, lads, that's what you want, and the scaffolders to go, yeah, all right. 10 minutes later, with a bit of tweaking and looking backwards and forwards, it was exactly the same as it was in the little paper model. It works. People get 3D.
No, they do, and sometimes it's interesting. We're not just talking about 3D as in rendered off a computer. Like people get 3D. Here's a physical cube thing we've made to represent what we need you to create in the layer scaffolding. Like we forget that 3D refers to pretty much everything we touch in our world. Like so, if you can create a little actual model, like a lot of people do that with the 3D printing now. Something that's complicated. They do a really scaled down model of and just 3D print it in the corner for a few hours to be able to bring to a client or bring to a supplier and go, that's what it is, but 17 times that size.
That is things I've seen at some pitches that some of our clients have done, actually taken a venue like that conference and 3D printed it and had an actual virtual. And I did one when I was at DRP. I helped one of the production managers do a pitch, and they built it out of card, but we built a whole conference set out of card. And then actually got a little mini projector and put the mini projector in the model and projected the actual video onto a model screen. And it was one of those things that probably took like 6 or 8 hours of probably two guys, 8 hours to do with various bits and bobs. But the output from it was just like, oh my God, that's incredible. It was one of the greatest things I've ever seen. But it was just a little projector and a cardboard model, but mind blown. It was really
cool. From a client, or what I mean, to see people go to that effort, that first it tells you about them. To see the visual of how it might look, I think is fascinating. I just put another offer live there in case anyone has seen it, that I meant to mention and I forgot to, so it suddenly dawned on me. I said I'd pop it up, which is just about feedback. We're getting some great feedback on these sessions in general. So what I've tried to do, because someone advised me to, and I hadn't been doing it, is to try and get all the feedback in one place. And one of the easiest places to do it is on a LinkedIn post. So if anyone does want to tell us anything good, bad, or indifferent, there's a link there on the offer, and it just brings you to a LinkedIn post, and you can leave feedback there. And then we always get to go back to one place to check the feedback, because to be honest, I get so many emails and messages that tracking them is quite difficult. One of the challenges that have come along with this webinar series is tracking people's interactions and stuff when they get in touch. And I love that people are getting in touch. It's just the work involved in tracking it sometimes, or going back to say, oh, who said that and where was it? So we're trying to keep them all together. Car parking mark the size of their exhibition stand with gaffer tape. Yeah, Jack, you're dead right. I mean, like, and it came up, I know Alan's on here because he's quite interested in this, and his session that he's doing in a few weeks is about event management plans and kind of doing them in pictures and other ways, and doing them in videos and stuff. And it's a similar thing. We've I might share it for Alan's session. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud now, but we did some video versions of our EMPs for certain clients as tests a few years ago, where they can just sit, like one was for a big parade, and they can just sit and watch a 5-minute video which talks them through and brings them through. And this is just PowerPoint slides made into a video. Like it's graphics. But for some people in the room, it was like we had revealed the last secret of God knows what to them, because they're used to files and files and files. Yeah. And for them to be able to sit, you could nearly pick the people who were after taking in way more that day than they did on any other gig we'd sent them documentation for, because that's just how they take stuff in. So that's the same as Jack's talking about, like literally marking out exhibition stands. Like you do have people who literally don't understand what a 3x, and it's not a problem, but a 3x3 space is, and they're saying, I want this in it, I want that in it, and you're going, no. Do you also want to be able to move around in it? Because that's too much. And sometimes you do need to just tape it on the ground and let them stand in it and go, oh yeah, right, I can touch oh yeah, okay, this won't work. Don't put that massive table I wanted in here. Let's put a smaller one. In fact, you just tell me what to put in there, and I'll leave that to you because you know what you're talking about. Sorry, I was waffling there a little bit just to see, did anyone jump in with any last minute questions? I've gone through all the ones I had caught. I've made the points I have, so I'm just going to scan. If anyone has a last minute burning something, what's that one marked as a question? Oh, that's just Rupert saying it's the rendering and the detailing that does take longer. Yeah. But again, I'm fascinated that, and this comes up in various realms of the industry, in that you're there with a skill set and knowledge, and you're doing this stuff in 3D, and then you're just holding the phone up, take a photo. Or as you said, record while you move it around a bit for them, so they have their 3D in a 7-second video on WhatsApp or something. So no matter how fancy we all get, we do all still come back to, the simplest things that get the message across and get the job done, which could be, a WhatsApp thing. I mean, you could screencast and all that stuff.
I could screencast, put some type of videos in, put some overlays in, make it look fantastic, but it's still going to get forwarded in someone's WhatsApp, and they're going to skip to the bit where it moves and then skip off it again.
And you know what? It's a little bit like, and it's a good way to kind of wrap up the session, I think, is because, again, some people with the 3D thing, I think we if we're not involved in it like you are, we're going, it'll take ages, it'll cost me a fortune or whatever. Like, even to come back to, like, why overdo it when you don't need to? Why do that when you can just send a WhatsApp video? Like, I liked the thing about the two relay screens and putting them in there, and it seemed to make sense to put them in there. The client was happy, and then you're still thinking about it though, and you're looking in there, and then you do the VR headset and go, we actually don't need them like this. But you're so right with your last point there, which was, we give them that money back, they spent it on something else. Yeah. And generally, two things are going to happen there, and we're not all idiots. It's nice to say, you don't need that stuff, save yourself a few quid, it's grand. 9 times out of 10, we know from a business perspective, they'll spend that money somewhere else. And for some clients, I've had clients, they go, okay, that's nice, but I need to spend that money because I've gotten the sign off for it. They'll expect I have to get rid of it.
So what can I have instead?
Exactly. I can't change the PO. So give me something else
You know
with
it's
that
going to
value.
be cheaper. Yes, but I can't change the PO.
This isn't about cheaper. This is about the lady who runs the PO place, and she'll kill me. So give me something else I need. Thank you very much. And look, that's the world we live in the same way as, we change the way we operate for different clients and what they need. Sometimes there's nothing stronger than a PO. That's it. It's done. It can't be more. It can't be less.
I've just noticed Lisa, definitely start with AutoCAD.
Yeah.
Start with AutoCAD, then move on to WYSIWYG.
Complete novice.
I got distracted then.
No, you're dead right. And I saw that jump up and I went, is that a question? Let's not lose it. So yeah, AutoCAD first, and then. But
also, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, Lisa, I can share some stuff with you, or if you've got any questions, then reach out.
You might want to consider Rupert's awesome AutoCAD course.
Apparently, very good. Awesome.
Rupert, you owe me, buddy. Okay, I think James, we're done. I have to say, I got lots from this, and I got lots that was, in parallel to what I expected to get. I think I'm quite impressed. And I know not everyone operates the same, but I do like the level of practicality that's involved in, yes, we make it all 3D and beautiful, but at the end of the day, it just needs to work. I need to get the sign off. You need to be happy. It's down to the same stuff that we all boil our work down to. And it's not just you guys off in some ivory tower making everything 3D and pretty because you like working in 3D software. Do you know what I mean? It has a place. Sometimes it's needed, sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's other ways to do it. Draw it on paper, whatever works, basically, is what it comes. Lisa's already on Rupert's free videos. Good stuff. All right, I think we're done. Thank you very much for your time and for the session. I think people got a lot from it, which is good. And that's the point of all these things. So what's next? Tuesday. Tuesday is the second live webinar. With the live panel one, which is the global perspectives on events during and after COVID-19. So that's the one with the panel. So if you've signed up for that, you'll be getting a mail today. In fact, what time is it? You might have gotten it already. Just so if you want to ask questions, send them in advance. I've seen a few come in since I've been on here. We'll try and answer as many as we can. And it's good for us to have some of them in advance so we can kind of have a solid answer for you and make that as much value as possible for you. So if you're there for that one Tuesday, we'll see you then. Otherwise, we'll see you Friday, or we'll see you in another one, or we'll never see you again. Maybe you're only here because you like James and you like 3D stuff. And that's fine too. We don't mind as long as you're getting some value out of the time you spend with us. So I shall wish you all a lovely weekend. James, thank you very much. And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for organising it all, Mark, again.
No worries, man. I'll see you soon.
Brilliant.
Bye, folks.